and welcome to this week's edition of the Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders, a special interview series conducted as part of this program where we're connecting sustainability leaders, chief sustainability officers, ESG directors, and all of the associated executives and professionals that are tasked with the responsibility of bringing the whole thesis of sustainability to the ground and to implementation in their respective organizations and institutions. And we're absolutely delighted this week to be joined by one of those critical sustainability leaders, Samar Al-Hameedi, who's the Vice President of Corporate Sustainability at ADNOC in Abu Dhabi. Welcome, Samar.
Good morning. Hello. Thank you for having me today.
Great to have you join us. Really appreciate it. Of course, ADNOC is one of, if not the national champion in the UAE, the biggest company that probably, without sort of stating otherwise, the most important company, and one which really sets not only benchmarks within the country, within the industry, but also globally, increasingly setting sort of destinations for the industry, the energy, the oil and gas industry to get on and lead in the great energy transition in the pathway to net zero. And of course, the CEO stating recently, a few months ago in Houston, we have a problem. Let's all get together and take some action to lead in this big transition. And lo and behold, recently we saw ADNOC announced the decision to accelerate its net zero ambition, bring it forward by 5 years to 2045, from 2050 to 2045. Samar, you might just share with us what were some of the key factors that influenced ADNOC's decision to accelerate its net zero ambitions and how it will achieve that?
That's an excellent question. These new targets mark a new chapter in our transformational journey to a lower carbon future and builds on an established legacy as a responsible global energy provider. We've brought these ambitions forward to 2045 and set a goal to achieve zero methane emissions by 2030. And that's all in recognition of the clear and urgent need to reduce carbon emissions across the industry. We've placed sustainability at the heart of our long-term strategy with targeted investments in growing our low-carbon solutions, including investing in renewables, building a global hydrogen value chain, and deploying innovative climate technologies across our value chain. In addition to advancing nature-based solutions and progressing our efforts in planting mangroves in the UAE, and that's in support of our committed target of planting 10 million mangroves by 2030. Our investments in decarbonization go back decades. We've invested billions of dollars in decarbonization and sustainability projects since the company's inception. And we've made an initial allocation of $15 billion to help expedite the implementation of our decarbonization initiatives, which is also in service of achieving our long-term 2045 ambition. These include...
When you take that, just to look at that 5-year sort of acceleration, which may in the scheme of things not seem a lot, but it is a massive, I mean, talking about a big reduction in the time frame, and 2045 is not that far away, I hate to say, but nonetheless, how is that going to be achieved? We've seen a lot of companies say, okay, we're going to buy carbon credits to achieve that, or we're going to sell some of our heavy carbon assets so we achieve it that way. How are ADNOC going to achieve it? Because it does seem like you're doing it the old-fashioned way. You're going to earn it. You're going to actually try and sweat some of these assets into a lower carbon footprint.
I wouldn't even call it old-fashioned way. It's the right way. We have on-the-ground targeted investments in decarbonizing our operational emissions. These include carbon capture and storage, and that's in support of our ambition to enhance our carbon capture capacity by 6-fold to 5 million tons per annum by 2030. Our investments in electrification, which we've already delivered in 2022 through sourcing of our grid electricity from clean energy sources, nuclear and solar. And that's resulted in 4 million tons of reduction in 2022 alone. Investments in energy efficiency and operational excellence. So it's on the ground, tangible reductions that will not only help us to 2045. I'd like to also point out that we have an interim target of reducing our carbon intensity by 25% by 2030 versus our 2019 baseline.
Wow. You mentioned there a little bit earlier methane emissions, which of course are one of the real Achilles heel for the industry, the methane leakage that happens through the production of oil and gas across the world. We've seen it most profoundly in recent years in the shale oil production and gas production in the United States, which of course has increased massively in the last decade. But methane emissions really one of the critical areas for the industry to tackle. ADNOC has targeted zero methane emissions by 2030. Again, a global leader stepping forward and setting really ambitious goals there. Can you elaborate on the specific strategies and technologies that ADNOC plans to implement to reach that milestone, zero methane by 2030?
You've pointed it out. Methane abatement is really critical to mitigating the adverse effects of climate change, given its higher contribution toward global warming when compared to CO2. We've already made great strides towards eliminating flaring of natural gas across our operations. This comes from a zero routine flaring policy that we've established back in the 2000s, and that was a major milestone on our path to eliminate flaring and reduce methane emissions, a fact that's already recognized by the World Bank Gas Flaring Tracker Report, which annually lists the UAE as having one of the lowest flaring volumes and intensities amongst oil and gas producing countries. And we are proud to report that our 2022 methane emissions for our operated oil and gas assets is already 6% lower than it was in 2021. And we've committed to a methane intensity target to not exceed 0.15% by 2025, which is already the lowest in the Middle East. And achieving zero methane emissions by 2030 will require collaboration, it will require partnerships, and we intend to leverage that through our membership in the Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0. You can't manage what you can't measure. And that's what that partnership really offers ADNOC and its members, is an understanding of our methane emission sources that will enable us to enhance our methane monitoring, our intervention strategies through deployment of advanced technology. And we really believe these partnerships and collaborations are key to accelerate any
it's
pace
critical,
of
isn't it, to get your supply chain involved, particularly in methane, when they are so a big part of the operational aspect of pipelines and operations in the field.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's through the deployment of these technologies and a better understanding of our point sources of methane emissions that will help us prioritize and implement focused intervention strategies that will support the reduction of methane emissions and achievement of our zero methane target by 2030.
And you have that. I've seen the deployment of drones, for example, this new tool that allows, because obviously one of the big challenges in the industry is, thousands of miles of pipeline. How do you track where there could be a leak? But now this new tool of drones is available. Is that something that ADNOC is also looking at?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of many solutions we're exploring. It's coupled with utilizing satellite monitoring as well. So we have a larger coverage of our assets. And then on the ground monitoring as well through leak detection repair programs, but then also identifying our hotspots of methane emissions and ensuring that we have monitoring systems, if you will, across our operations.
As ADNOC, as we sort of mentioned earlier, is really sort of setting a benchmark here, the first in its peer group amongst the big national energy companies, the big international energy companies to target 2045. Ultimately, it's still going to be a great challenge to achieve these targets, ambitious as they are, ADNOC with great commitment and skills to get there. But what do you anticipate will be some of the sort of main challenges in the new timeline, and how does the company plan to overcome them?
I would look at this more positively. I mean, there are obvious challenges of availability of mature technologies that would help us accelerate our decarbonization, but it's also an opportunity. Accelerating our net zero target to 2045 is really supercharging our action plan to decarbonize our operations. Our 2022 emissions data already confirm our position as one of the least carbon intensive oil and gas producers in the world. And as you said, we're the first company among our peers to accelerate our net zero target to 2045, a huge undertaking, but that's anchored by an allocation of $15 billion towards our low carbon solution, which really focuses our investments in funding these solutions and renewable projects, as well as
You
investing
recently
in our
hosted the Climate Technology Forum in Abu
Absolutely.
Dhabi. We're actually, trying to create the technologies or accelerate their development that is going to be needed for this journey.
Exactly. At that, the climate tech was an excellent forum for us to bring different industry players and technology providers to explore and look at solutions that would help address our decarbonization challenges, look at how we can scale up a lot of these technologies to accelerate our pace of decarbonization. And these really will allow us to achieve emission reductions through real on-the-ground decarbonization projects. Yeah? And for example, our intermediate 2030 commitment to reduce our carbon intensity by 25% would translate into up to 20 million tons per annum of carbon abatement, very significant portion of our operational emissions. And these come with substantial emission abatement potentials, including $3.8 billion project connecting ADNOC's offshore operations to clean grid power, which could reduce our carbon footprint by up to 50% of offshore operations, and expanding carbon capture capacity to 5 million tons per annum by 2030.
I see you recently announced an agreement with Occidental Petroleum in the United States in the advancing and investing in carbon capture and storage and air capture as well.
Absolutely. I mean, our business model is really built on having these partnerships, cross-industry, cross-border partnerships that would help leverage our collective expertise, our knowledge, our investments to actually scale up the required technologies to help decarbonize the industry.
I mean, it is one of the mysteries in a way until now that the industry hasn't managed to get carbon capture to a scale and an economic scale that is that you would think would be commensurate with the challenge and the opportunity. Why on this occasion do you think the industry will get there, if you like, with carbon capture, which of course is not a new challenge, but ultimately does seem to be at the center of a lot of the solutions?
Whatever scenarios you look at, carbon capture is recognized as a key lever for decarbonization. And I think that translates into an urgency of action and an urgency of investment in helping scale up carbon capture capacity, and not only on the capture side of the business, but also ensuring that we have the sequestration and storage capabilities as well to support that.
And clearly, there's a growing economic opportunity as we move forward with carbon probably having a monetary value that could have other functions we've already seen. Of course, CO2 reinjection for enhanced oil recovery and other purposes. And hopefully, we will see more of that. We mentioned at the beginning, Samar, that ADNOC, of course, is a national champion in the UAE, one of the biggest company in the country and also in its industry across the region. How does ADNOC plan to ensure that its decarbonization efforts are aligned with the broader sustainability goals? Of course, this year the country is hosting COP28, so aligning that with the strategies of the UAE and the wider sort of global community.
I mean, as a national oil company, it's a given that part of our role and mandate is to support the national commitments on sustainability and climate. And building on our legacy as a responsible global energy provider, His Excellency Dr. Sultan, our Managing Director and Group CEO, has led a transformation journey to place decarbonization at the heart of the company's strategy, which is very evident in our accelerated commitments and our investments. And all of this is in support of the UAE's energy diversification strategy and net zero plans. And our accelerated decarbonization plan is fully aligned with the UAE's net zero by 2050 strategic initiative, as well as the third update of the UAE's second nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. And through our investments in Masdar, in renewables, growing production capacity of blue and green hydrogen, we are a key enabler of the UAE's updated energy strategy and hydrogen strategy. And we'll continue on these ongoing investments in Masdar and partnerships like with companies like TAQA to further diversify and decarbonize the UAE's energy mix.
Well, we saw recently, of course, the Masdar listing in the London markets, the debt listing there, which was around the green financing opportunity.
Absolutely. And it's through that our investment in Masdar where we're targeting an enhanced portfolio of renewables globally, as well as production of green hydrogen by 2030.
We mentioned, and we'll just wrap up with obviously COP28 is a big destination for all of us this year, taking place in the UAE at the end of November. The point you mentioned earlier that yes, you've set 2045 as the new target for net zero, for ADNOC's target for net zero, bringing it forward to 5 years. But the milestones we see at COP28, the big one of the great ambitions of COP28 is to be the great stock take, to take stock of where is the world at in meeting the Paris climate agreements. I just wanted to bring that point home to your own great stock take regarding ADNOC's 2045 goal. You mentioned there one or two milestones that you will be hitting along the way to ensure that you're on track. You might just close out our interview with restating that and also other milestones that might be worth noting.
Absolutely. We already have several tangible decarbonization projects underway to meet our 25% intensity reduction by 2030. That will significantly reduce our carbon footprint. These include using nuclear and solar energy to provide 100% of our onshore grid electricity needs. Since the start of 2022, we've already started to source these cleaner energy sources to power our operations, as well as ongoing plans to connect our offshore operations to the grid through our $3.8 billion project that upon completion can reduce our offshore carbon footprint by up to 50%. Our initial allocation of $15 billion towards low carbon solutions with a focus on deploying decarbonization technologies, and that strongly position us to accelerate our net zero ambition to 2045. Through our company's shareholding in Masdar, the UAE's renewable energy champion, we're driving global growth of renewable energy and green hydrogen, targeted portfolio of more than 100 gigawatts of renewable capacity and production of 1 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030. Our ambition to enhance our carbon capture capacity to 5 million tons per annum, building from 800,000 tons today through our Riyadh CCUS facility. And over the coming months, we'll continue to announce further investments and further associated projects that would help enable our decarbonization journey.
Well, it sounds to me, Samar, like you're going to be very busy because I think you're probably part of the internal police force to ensure that all of these milestones are hit so that when we arrive at 2045, indeed, ADNOC achieves its very ambitious goals and a very trend-setting goal for the industry. Hopefully others will follow. I think they will, recognizing the key importance of everybody accelerating their targets. Samar Al-Hameedi, Vice President of Corporate Sustainability at ADNOC, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.